Hey everybody, welcome to a special Saturday edition of the Haskin Cast podcast. Today I'll be doing a review of my second Haunted Holidays Deadly Christmas album and just kind of telling you a little bit song by song what happened and how it all came about. It is the last Saturday before Christmas, which comes up on Tuesday this year. And the time has just flown by. It seems like it was just Halloween, but then in a way it seems like Halloween was months ago. Really weird how that happens. At least I've never understood it. But anyway, we are where we are, and it is almost Christmas. So I hope that you guys are getting done with your shopping and your preparation and whatever, and all you have left to do is the baking and the fun part, and then you can just relax and enjoy it. I think we tend to spend so much time trying to plan things and make them perfect or pack all these activities in. And we tend to not really enjoy what we're going to do because we're too busy trying to make it perfect. I think a lot of times the best thing is to just kind of let it go. Do whatever you're going to do. Don't stress so much about those things. The only real tradition that I have, because sometimes I'm in a different place every year, I tend to, when I'm home, I will get up very early and I'll take my strip walk at about 4 a.m. here in Vegas. And then I have breakfast at Treasure Island, and then I go home and go back to bed for a little while, and then I wake up and have more coffee so I can wake up. That is the plan for this year, so I'm looking forward to that. It really feels different on Christmas Day. It also feels different when you start your walk at like 4 a.m. versus 8 or 9 or 11 at night. The strip is so much quieter at 4 a.m. Very, very few people are stumbling around at that point. It's really just a quiet time to relax and enjoy and take in all the beauty and everything. The challenge being that because it is not very busy, a lot of the escalators and things are off. So it's a little extra work on my legs, but probably could use it. So that's the plan for this year anyway. And I hope that whatever you're doing, you're going to have a good time and make some wonderful memories and do things that you can look back on and smile, because really that to me is what life is all about. So let's talk about the Haunted Holidays series a little bit. The second and third albums I actually wrote together, at least as far as all the dialogue goes. I was going to record them at the same time, and partially I did. But the idea was to actually complete them at the same time so that I had a little more continuity between the last two than I did between the first and the second. And I should be able to accomplish the majority of that. The third album is written, at least the basic audio side of it is written, and I have some things that I want to go back and polish up a little bit. And, typically you write something and then you listen back and you go, okay, well, I need a little more here, a little less there. This makes a little more sense if I do it this way. So I just have some changes to make before I finalize it. But I had really intended on mixing and mastering them at the same time. And then just not releasing the third one until Christmas of 2019. So that's still going to happen, but they may not sound exactly as close as I wanted them to, but I'm pretty confident I can get them reasonably close anyway. So I wrote all the dialogue for both albums, and then I had to sit back and think, okay, what fits together better? What's a good combination of the young narrator and the old man? And how do I want to end each album and what songs, because I already had the songs picked out, of course, and I kind of wanted to figure what songs would go well together in that. So I ended up finding my nice balance, and I picked what I wanted to go on album 2 and then album 3. And I wasn't really going to know the order of the songs until I actually finished them, because there's the story side of it, and you don't want to stick stories that may touch on similar topics or anything necessarily together, or you may want to if that's part of the strategy of the album. But for this, it was really more of a, I didn't want a bunch of old man narration and then a bunch of young man narration. I wanted them to kind of be intertwined a little bit. So that was part of the selection process and part of how I chose which songs I was going to do which voice on. And then, of course, once I do rough drafts of the audio, then I kind of listen to it and figure out, okay, I think this will work a little bit better. Maybe this ending goes out nicely and that would work well with this beginning, and those stories go together, or they aren't together. So that was really part of the selection process for the order of the album. And then, of course, ending with Away in a Manger is always kind of like that just little bedtime song that tucks everything in nicely. So the first song that I have on the album is the take of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, of course, is God Rest Ye Merry Limbless Men. And the idea behind this one was inspired by a lot of the things that I grew up learning and still learn now about things that people in the past generations believed. And how ridiculous some of them seem, like, worshiping the sun and things like that just seemed kind of weird to me. And, you look at Egyptian culture and they worship these gods and things that didn't, as far as we know, don't exist or didn't exist. So it's interesting that we believe the things that they put stock in, or we believe that they believed the things that we think they put stock in, I guess I should say. And so this kind of came from that idea and how ridiculous it gets with, being able to commit a sin when you have no limbs left and things like that. So that was the basic idea behind the song. And then musically, it just kind of came together very quickly. I think it probably took me longer to find the right sounds than to actually put them together behind the dialogue. And since I recorded all the dialogue first for this album and the next album, it wasn't like the last album where I wasn't going to do dialogue and then decided at the end to add dialogue and then had to retrofit all the songs. This actually, I was able to lay out the dialogue and kind of set it more specifically as I went along, because these aren't verse, chorus, bridge, chorus out type songs. They're really more narration. So just to record it and then lay it all out in order and then take those little pieces and put them in line as I'm writing the music. So it really gives me a free palette to make the parts of the music as long or as short as I want them to be without being held into that grid of, okay, well, now, you've got your 4 or 8 bar intro and then you're going to have your first verse and each line is 4 bars, or, it's not constrictive like that at all. So it's really nice to just have the dialogue done and in place, and then I can just move it around and really let the music do what it's going to do and not infringe on the dialogue, because I'm not trying to fit anything in. So anyway, let's just take a listen to a little bit of God Rest Ye Merry Limbless Men. The second song on the album is one of my absolute favorites. This one, I partnered with Lindsay Laux, and if you listen to her episode on this podcast, we talked a little bit about this song and kind of her inspiration for writing the dialogue. I had just read the second book of the Sales series that she writes, and I thought, it would be fun to do something maybe together on this album with her. And I approached her and gave her all the song titles I hadn't written stories for yet, and said, pick something. And she had picked Oh Holy Night, and I had already come up with the title of All Hellish Night, Oh Hellish Night. And she chose that one, and then she wrote the story and sent me the draft, and it was almost spot on from the beginning. There were just a couple minor tweaks, and so it was. It came together very quickly, and it's really interesting because I didn't know until we did the podcast together that when she was describing the creature on the trash can, and when I read it the first time, the instant picture I got was a picture I had seen of this giant snow crab that was wrapped around an aluminum trash can. And it turned out that's exactly the same picture that had inspired her to write that part of the story. So I love that came together so well. And the story really moves. It's very action-packed. You feel a definite sense of immediate tension and purpose. And you're kind of rooting for the girl to save the kid. And I really like that. So it just came together really well. And then I sent her a rough mix of the song once I had done the music. And because I really wanted her input on it. I wanted her to like the whole package of the story, not just have written the dialogue for it. So she really dug what I did for it. And then I did a final mix, which came out 10 times better than the original mix that I did. So let's take a little bit of a listen to that. Oh, hellish Hellish night, the town is shuttered tightly. It is the night it will come for your babes. We've locked the doors and blocked all the chimneys, but it appeared with tentacles waving. A thrill of fear, a mother sprints to follow, for yonder sucks the life from her newborn. Jane didn't believe the stories about what happened in the quiet town after nightfall. She thought her new neighborhood was under some kind of... Before I go any further, I did forget to talk in the intro about the cover art. And man, once again, and I know I'm going to say this on every album review I do, but Kelly blew it out of the water. I was really curious to see what she had planned, because when we did the first one, I told her I had planned on doing 3. And so I said, when you're working on the art, think about the fact that we're going to have 3. And so I don't know how she came up with ideas. I'm going to have to ask her when I have her on the show, as far as like how far ahead she thought and that sort of thing. Because she won't be working on it until probably August or so. We'll start on the cover for the next one, but definitely she knew ahead of time that there were going to be 3. So obviously there were elements that she would have wanted to put in, but when she sent me the basic idea of it, immediately just the tree and the presents and everything it was all very dark. And so we lightened up certain spots and added a little more depth and shading to the walls. But apart from that, I mean, right out of the gate, just loved the concept. And I do have to apologize to Rebecca Poole of Dreams to Media, who did the lettering on both of these albums, and she's the person that I go to for all of that now. Had a person that I was working with before, and I was sort of unhappy with the way things were going on one of the projects. And Rebecca came in on a clutch and did this first one, and just created that beautiful sort of green, almost haunting glow to the letters, and I just loved it, absolutely loved it. And so that's the branding now for this series. And I can't thank both of them enough, because without that, the project wouldn't be the same. That's the visual representation of what I do. And it really pops to me, and just fantastic artwork from both of them. So you can check out Kelly at outsidethebox.photo, and you can check out Rebecca's work at Dreams 2 Media, DREAMS, the number 2 Media. And she does a lot of book covers and things too. She's also a writer, very, very talented, very sweet. And of course, we've talked about Kelly, and the kind of photography that she does is just stunning. I absolutely love it. And she's very versatile with the kind of stuff that she does. She does a lot of animal pictures and does a lot of photograph taking. And some of the stuff that I've worked with her on has been a photograph that she's just completely manipulated into something else. And when I get around to doing the Kindred Spirits review, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But both of them, awesome people, incredible artists. I'm very, very fortunate to be working with either of them, let alone both. So thank you, ladies, very much. You make what I do a very beautiful thing. That being said, the next song is the take on O Come All Ye Faithful, which is called O Come All Ye Helpless. And this is kind of a take on the early biblical times and in the Old Testament, things that we read about, and thinking about Christmas. A lot of that comes from the Old Testament, the birth of Jesus and all that. And, the concept for this was very similar. I was kind of just still in that mindset of the olden times and what people believed, and they're, doing sacrifices to please God so that he would give them food or healthy family. And that always just seemed completely ridiculous to me. So that just kind of stuck in my head, and I wrote the story around that, and God kind of getting annoyed with the fact that they weren't so excited about Jesus being born. And, when you get on a roll, sometimes you just get in that zone and things develop in interesting ways. And that wasn't something I had originally planned when I came up with the concept, but as I wrote it, just kind of came out. So let's take a listen to O Come All Ye Helpless. At At the time, people would have agreed that things were going just fine in the world until baby Jesus came along. That isn't meant as an insult to Jesus. It is simply a matter that... The First Chosen was another story about greed, trying to do something that you think is going to better yourself, but still, even with the people that you're doing it with, wanting a little bit better than them, to be kind of the leader of the pack or whatever. And, I thought there's not much that I know about the story of the three wise men. And so I just kind of turned them into almost like pirates of the day, and just kind of trying to grab Jesus's favor so that they can be set up for life and possibly the afterlife. And then, of course, one of them has to turn on the others and try to take a little bit for himself, and the others find out, and it gets a little bit crazy. But I just thought it was kind of an interesting twist on their trek to find Jesus and give him gifts. Of course, everything that we're taught, everything has this, wonderful, sweet, thoughtful purpose. But what if it didn't? What if they really were just traveling across to meet Jesus to kind of gain favor with him? And that became the start of the story for me. And then it just kind of went from there. So let's take a listen to that now. I Heard the Bells That Take You Away is my take on I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And the idea for this one actually came from George Carlin's stand-up. He was talking, I don't remember at the moment the exact track on the album, but he was talking about the fact that, people like John Lennon and people that are trying to make the world more peaceful usually end up meeting some horrible end and getting murdered. And it's so ridiculous when you think about it. But as I thought about that, I thought, well, that really does seem to be the case. And thinking, especially about John Lennon just being someone who was always a proponent of peace and wanting to make the world better, and just saying, we can all do fine if we all just work together and get along, and there's no reason for all this hatred and everything else. And just kind of developed the story about this old man that's just standing there trying to make his point and trying to make people understand that there isn't peace on earth, but there should be, and there can be. And then, of course, somebody has to find annoyance with that because their personal situation is more important than the global one, because they're the one that has to deal with it. And they go and take matter in their own hands. And, of course, things go too far, which is always the case. And that was the story for this one. And let's take a listen to that.
There is no peace on earth, the homeless man shouted from the snowy corner of the park he had made his home this winter. There is no goodwill towards men.
Mrs. Claus was actually a story I wrote last year as I was finishing the first Haunted Holidays album. And I released a demo version of it that, as I looked back, I realized that I had forgotten to cut the reverb from the vocal. So it sounded a little bit out of context from the original Haunted Holidays album. But I really like the story. I can't think of a story that I've really read about Mrs. Claus or what's her deal. And so I thought, well, I'll just make something up. And of course, every character or, picture or figurine or whatever that you see of her, she's just, this plump, smiling, cute little woman. And you just see her in the kitchen baking all the cookies and everything. And I fixed that. So in this one, she's a little bit more aggressive, shall we say. And she is really the prime mover behind how Santa takes care of Christmas in one night. When you think about it, there's really everybody could have their own Christmas in different hemispheres or different parts of the country on a different day. But, of course, the stories are always that they happen in one night. So this is kind of the impetus of how Santa got to the point where he became the speed racer that was able to hit all the houses in one night in the world. And, of course, that originally there was far less houses, and now there's tons more. So there's never really been a good explanation for how he handles the volume. But there was never really an explanation for how it all came about. And so the idea of Mrs. Claus being the, they say that they're behind every successful man, there's a strong woman. And this would definitely be one of those cases. So as I went to fit it into this second album, I did change around the music a little bit. It's fairly similar, but I found that some of the tones didn't really work together as much as I'd hoped on the demo. And so I kind of rearranged those a little bit. But for the most part, it stays the same as the original that I composed. And let's take a listen to Mrs. Claus.
You don't hear much about Santa's mysterious wife, and with good reason. While she can often be seen in Christmas
Angels we have heard on high, or my version, Angels we have heard can't save you now, is a story of two guys who got drunk and got rejected by a woman and took matters into their own hands. And this is a pretty dark story, even for the Haunted Holidays album. I think this is probably the most aggressive and dark and brutal story that I've written for this one. And it tells the story of Sarah, who is just this pretty farmer's daughter, and these two guys who get really sick of being told no, and take her up into a cave and do what they're going to do, and her struggle to fight back. And this is probably musically my favorite on here. The build of it and the tonality of it, just the little tinges of synthesizer and things that are in the background, really to me make the song and really drive the story along. So this is probably one of my top favorites overall on the album. I think it's a solid story, and really dig the music that I composed for this one. So, I mean, I like it all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it out. I would have kept working on it until I was happy with it, and I am happy with all of it. But there's some that you're going to like more than others, and for me, this is definitely one on the album that I think is one that tends to pop out in my head at random times more than the others.
A drunken bet made over a campfire one chilly night begins our next terrifying tale.
The 12 Days of Christmas is a story I almost didn't do because I thought, how am I going to do this and make it not incredibly repetitive and annoying and boring? Because, it's the challenge of the song is usually when you're singing it with family or whatever, is just trying to remember what gifts come in what order. It's sometimes I was like, well, is it 7 Lords of Leaping? Is it 9? Is it 11? I can't remember. And so, you just kind of like draw back just a little bit until everybody says it. And then you can jump in and go, oh yeah, I remember that now. At least that's what I remember doing as a child, because I never had the song memorized by any means. And we didn't have the lyrics in front of us. We just kind of did it all from memory. And sometimes we would have to stop and try and talk it out and remember what came before what and how many of who there were, which bird. So I wanted to avoid that whole thing and just tell it as a straight story and not have to do all the repetition parts. And I came up with the idea of, again, another male-dominated story, because you think about olden times, and I really, you think about Christmas stories and things are all back from olden times. And so that's really where I set the album, is back in those days. And this was a case where, again, the guy owns his own farm. He takes care of everything. He doesn't want his wife to, lift a finger to do anything, because he wants her skin to be perfect. He wants her to just be, soft and not hard from work or anything like that. So, of course, she's not going to have it. She's bored with life, and she wants something a little more for herself, and she tries to get it. And then it just goes on from there. And then this fight between these two farmers go on for years at Christmas. It's when it escalates. I tried to stay true to what the actual days were and tie in something at least to that. I think I came pretty close. But hopefully the story is an interesting one, and you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. This was definitely one of the more fun ones to convert each of the days into something that would fit in with the story and turn it from some, wonderful gift that's given from one person to another into some, horrible sign of mockery between the two people. So that was the fun for this one for me, and it really just kind of moves forward. And I thought this would be a good one to add a pulse to. So I had added a kick drum in there and a little pulsing synth to just kind of move the song forward, because it is a little bit longer, and you're going through the 12 days. So while people might expect it to be a little bit repetitive and boring, I wanted something that moved forward constantly. So there's really not any looking back at previous days or previous things that were left from for a farmer. It was really more about just the thing, and then the next thing that was going to happen is retaliation. So anyway, I hope that you enjoy it, and here is the 12 Days of Revenge. Matthias Krebs was a simple man who raised sheep and loved a woman named Priscilla. He built his own home with his own hands, grew his own crops, and honored his wife each and every day with all the love he had in his heart. So for the finale, I wanted to do, something like I said earlier, that just kind of tucked you into bed, and Away in a Manger. For me, that was always kind of the song that would lull me to sleep with the different versions that I had heard. And some of them were instrumental and some of them had vocals, but it was just kind of just kind of lay down on the pillow and listen to the song and drift off to sleep. So I wanted this to be something that just kind of wrapped up the album nicely. And of course, the old man has to have a couple last words to say before it's time to put himself down until next year. And it was a fun one to do. I really enjoyed working on this one with the Mental Sauna Christmas album. And it's kind of cool to do some of the same songs and then do like a darker, more evil contrast. And this one's certainly not something that you're going to want to fall asleep with, but it does have a lot of dark tones, some really good soundscapes, and it was a lot of fun to put together. And then, of course, the old man and his little ending cackle, which is something that I think is a little bit traditional now for these albums, and something I enjoy doing. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the album. I hope it's something that you would want to share with your friends and maybe play at your party, or just listen to. It's something that you can listen to while you're driving around, or while you're decorating, or while you're decorating for Halloween even, because that's a little bit before Christmas, but you're starting to get that feeling that Christmas will be here soon. So thanks for listening. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. It is currently Friday night while I'm finishing this up, and I'll have this up and available here in a couple hours. And then tomorrow I'm doing my interview for Wednesday's podcast, which I'm really excited about. My friend Travis from That 80s Band, who's a hugely successful 80s cover band in Denver, Colorado. And they've been flown out to Vegas and different places to play. Great stuff, a lot of talent in that band. So I'm really, and I've known the guy forever. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. We've done some shows together back when we were both in progressive metal bands, and have a long history of music and friendship. And he's a great guy. So looking forward to chatting with him tomorrow and then bringing that to you guys on Wednesday. I'll be taking a little bit of a break from the review albums. I wanted to get the Haunted Holidays albums in before Christmas, but doing 2 podcasts a week right now has been a little bit hectic. So going to go back to one for a little bit, and then I'll be sneaking a couple of Saturday episodes in. I've got a couple of special guests lined up, and we're having some scheduling issues. So I'll be bringing you a couple of more special Saturday episodes as time goes on, once I'm able to get those done. The desire is there definitely from my guests. It's just a matter of finding a time that works for both of us, because we're all very, very busy people these days. So anyway, have a wonderful Christmas. Do something fantastic. Do something that's going to give you wonderful, long-lasting memories that you can look back on. Take your pictures, but don't be on your phones. Be with the people that you're with and enjoy. I've been invited to a bit of a Christmas party that's a traditional one every year, and I'm very much looking forward to stopping by there and saying hello to some dear friends and enjoying the time together. So have a great holiday season, guys, and we will see you on Wednesday with Travis from That 80s Band.